I was born a sharecropper in Mississippi, worked the cotton fields, and learned early that this country did not see me as equal. When I tried to vote, they fired me, beat me, and tried to silence me. But I stood up anyway. I challenged America to live up to its promise. I did this for my people, because nobody is free until everybody is free. Now, please listen to the grid's canvas.
Fannie Lou Hamer was not born into comfort, power, or protection. She was born into a system designed to break her spirit long before she could ever challenge it. Born in 1917 in rural Mississippi, she entered a world where Black life was tightly controlled, economically exploited, politically silenced, and violently disciplined. From the moment she could walk, she was forced to work the cotton fields alongside her parents and siblings, not as a choice, but as a condition of survival. Mississippi's sharecropping system was slavery by another name, one that kept Black families permanently indebted, landless, and trapped in cycles of poverty enforced by law, terror, and custom. Fannie Lou Hamer would later say she began picking cotton at the age of 6, her childhood swallowed by labor, hunger, and exhaustion. Education was limited, healthcare was nearly non-existent, and political rights were entirely denied. Yet even in this world of rigid control, something within her refused to fully submit. By her teenage years, Fannie Lou Hamer had already witnessed the realities of racial violence and white supremacy in the Deep South. Lynching was not an abstract concept, it was a warning system. Beatings, disappearances, and intimidation were part of everyday life for Black Mississippians. The law did not protect them, it hunted them. Police, judges, and local officials worked hand in hand with white mobs to enforce racial hierarchy. For Black women, the violence was layered: physical, economic, sexual, and reproductive. In the 1960s, Hamer would undergo what was commonly referred to as a Mississippi ambidectomy, a forced sterilization performed without her consent while she was hospitalized for a minor procedure. This was not an isolated incident. It was state-sanctioned population control aimed at Black women, particularly the poor. Her body, like her labor and her voice, was treated as property of a system that saw Black reproduction as a threat. For decades, Hamer lived under these conditions without any formal political awareness of her rights, not because she lacked intelligence or courage, but because the system was designed to keep her uninformed. Black Mississippians were deliberately excluded from civic knowledge. Voting was framed as something dangerous, impossible, or irrelevant. But everything changed in 1962, when organizers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, arrived in her community to hold a meeting about voter registration. It was the first time Hamer had ever heard Black people openly discuss voting as a right, rather than a crime. She later recalled that moment as a kind of awakening. She didn't describe it as becoming political, she described it as becoming human. When she attempted to register to vote, the consequences were immediate and severe. She was fired from the plantation where she had worked for 18 years. She was evicted from her home. Her family faced threats, harassment, and constant danger. Shots were fired into the houses of Black families who dared to challenge white authority. The message was clear: political participation would be punished as an act of rebellion. Yet, instead of retreating, Hamer stepped forward. She joined SNCC as field secretary, traveling across Mississippi to encourage Black citizens to register to vote, fully aware that she was risking her life each time she spoke. What followed was not a peaceful disagreement over policy. It was a domestic war against Black democracy. White citizens' councils, local police, and state officials coordinated efforts to suppress Black political participation through economic retaliation, arrests, violence, and murder. Black churches were bombed, activists were followed and surveilled. The FBI watched closely, but intervened selectively. often more concerned with monitoring civil rights leaders than protecting them. In Mississippi, the act of teaching someone how to fill out a voter registration form could get you killed. In 1963, while traveling back from a voter registration workshop in South Carolina, Fannie Lou Hamer and several other activists were arrested in Winona, Mississippi. What happened next would mark her body and spirit for the rest of her life. While in jail, she was brutally beaten by police officers who ordered other inmates to assault her with blackjacks. She was beaten until her kidneys were permanently damaged. She suffered blood clots, chronic pain, and impaired vision. The beating was so severe that she nearly died. This was not rogue violence. It was state-sanctioned torture carried out by law enforcement against a black woman whose crime was demanding the right to vote. Yet even after that beating, Fannie Lou Hamer refused to be silent. Her voice grew stronger, clearer, and more uncompromising. She understood that the violence inflicted upon herself was not meant just for her. It was meant to terrorize an entire people into submission. And so she spoke not only for herself, but for the countless Black Americans who had been beaten, lynched, sterilized, impoverished, and erased. Her most powerful moment came in 1964 at the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City. Fannie Lou Hamer was a founding member of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, created to challenge the legitimacy of Mississippi's all-white Democratic delegation. Despite Black Mississippians making up nearly half the state's population, they were entirely excluded from political representation. The MFDP demanded to be seated as the rightful delegation, arguing that Mississippi's official representatives were chosen through a racially exclusionary process that violated the principles of democracy. When Fannie Lou Hamer testified before the Credentials Committee, the nation heard something it had never heard before. Not a polished politician, not a legal expert, but a poor Black woman from Mississippi speaking plainly and truthfully about the violence used to suppress Black voters. She described the beatings, the threats, the murders, and the fear. She asked a question that cut through decades of patriotic rhetoric. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives be threatened daily?
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Roosevelt, Mississippi. Sunflower County, the home of Senator James O. Eastland and Senator Stinney. All of this is on account of we want to register to become first-class citizens. And if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America? Thank you.
Her testimony was so powerful that President Landry G. Bonson hastily called a press conference to interrupt the broadcast. He understood the danger of her truth. He understood that if Americans truly listened, the myth of American democracy would be impossible to sustain. Though the MFDP was ultimately denied full recognition, Hamer's words reverberated across the nation. She lost the political battle, but she won the moral one. In the years that followed, Hamer continued her work, not just in voting rights, but in economic justice. She understood that political freedom meant little without material stability. She co-founded the Freedom Farm Cooperative, allowing poor Black families to collectively own land, grow food, and reduce their dependence on white-controlled plantations. It was a radical act of self-determination in a system built on Black dependency. Despite her immense contributions, Fannie Lou Hamer was often sidelined, minimized, and erased from mainstream civil rights narratives. She did not fit the image America preferred. She was not male. She was not middle class. She was not willing to soften her language for white comfort. She spoke with a Southern accent, carried the scars of poverty, and refused respectability politics. That made her dangerous, not just to segregationists, but to liberal institutions that wanted change without disruption. Fannie Lou Hamer died in 1977 at the age of 59, her body worn down by years of violence, stress, and neglect. But her legacy endures. She helped expose the lie of American democracy while expanding its possibilities. She proved that leadership does not require permission, polish, or protection. It requires courage, clarity, and an unbreakable commitment to collective freedom. Her most famous words remain a warning and a challenge. Nobody's free until everybody's free. They remind us that justice delayed is justice denied, that silence is complicity, and that the voices most often dismissed are often the ones telling the deepest truth. Fannie Lou Hamer did not ask for history's approval. She demanded accountability. And in doing so, she reshaped the conscience of a nation that tried and failed to silence her.
Still a very rough place, People is not just walking up like they used to do in the past, walking out, shooting a man down or getting maybe 200 or 300 people carrying you out and lynching you, but it's in a most settled way. They can let you starve to death, not give you jobs. These are some of the things that's happening right now in Mississippi. See, Mississippi is not actually Mississippi's problem. Mississippi is America's problem. Because if America wanted to do something about what has been going on in Mississippi, it could have stopped by now. It wouldn't have been in the past few years between 40 and 50 churches bombed and burned. You see, and this lead me to say, all of the burning and bombing that was done to us in the houses, nobody never said too much about that, and nothing was done. But let something be burned, by a black man, and then, my God, you see, the flag is drenched with our blood. Because, you see, so many of our ancestors was killed because we have never accepted slavery. We had to live on it, but we've never wanted it. So we know that this flag is drenched with our blood. So what the young people are saying now, give us a chance to be young men, respected as a man, as we know this country was built on the black backs of black people across this country. And if we don't have it, you ain't gonna have it either, because we gonna tear it up. That's what they saying. And people ought to understand that. I don't see why they don't understand that. They know what they've done to us. All across this country, they know what they've done to us. This country is desperately sick, and man is on the critical list. I really don't know where we go from here.